Hi everybody! I reviewed An American Marriage for February and I wanted to bring back some romance into my book reviews. So I reviewed American Marriage, a novel by Tayari Jones, and Captured in Paint by Ann M. Miller. And I didn't think 6 minutes was enough to do justice to this book. So I'm warning you ahead of time that there will be spoiler alerts. I'll do my best to be discreet. But a book like this, whether you think it's a good book, did you like the author's style, did you like the mechanics of what authors use to write a story, did you like the plot, are you team Andre, are you team Roy? That's a conversation we can have, but it's irresponsible of someone like me who has a platform not to talk about the big picture of what inspired this book. According to the author, Miss Jones, she got a Harvard fellowship to do research on mass incarceration, specifically wrongful mass incarcerations. And what she found was very upsetting, and she felt like she needed to write about this. She took the advice of a mentor that said, don't write about the problem with the people, write about the people with the problem. And I thought she did justice to the problem. And the problem is mass incarceration in America. And I have stats for you that I can read to you. I always knew it was high, but I didn't realize it was like gun violence, like it's our national shame. I didn't realize that, and I will read it for you, but I just want to go over this. The book was given to her, I think, serendipitously, where she was struggling with characters, went to the mall, and overheard a well-dressed woman and a okay-dressed man who were clearly in love but having an argument, and she said, "Roy, I know you wouldn't have waited for me for 7 years." And he replied, "This would have never happened to you." And even a stranger like myself would immediately assume they're referring to incarceration. That's what inspired the book. So if you want to hear the stats, here they are. The US makes up 5% of the world's population and 25% of the prison population. 1 out of 3 black men, 1 out of 6 Latino men, and 1 out of 17 white men can expect to go to jail or prison at some point in that lifetime. And the grand total adds up to 2.3 million people imprisoned. These stats are from the ACLU, and I will create a link in my notes if you want to contribute and be part of the solution and not just part of the discussion. The next stats are from the Loyola Law Review. Apparently, Louisiana has the highest rate of incarceration, and a very good explanation in the Loyola Law Review, and its length, is the war on drugs. So most of us grew up in a time with Reagan said, just say no, and that's fine. But what was happening were people were going to jail for very minuscule, non-threatening, non-violent reasons that led to why Louisiana is so notorious for incarceration. Additionally, Louisiana has mandatory minimums for drug offenses. According to this, the states with the lowest rates of incarceration are Utah, Minnesota, Vermont, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Maine. And even though it has the lowest rate in the US, it's still higher than South Africa and former Soviet Union republics. If you want to know how does the US compare to the rest of the world, it's 693 for every 100,000 people are incarcerated. Canada, it's 145 for every 100,000, and the UK, it's 119 for every 100,000. If you want to know what is the rate of incarceration in Louisiana, it is 816 per 100,000, and in Russia, it's only 492. And in China, it's 119 per 100,000. I want to add my personal experience with incarceration. I know of 4 individuals who have related stories to me about brushes with the law. And it came casually over Thanksgiving dinner where we were invited, and the conversation just came naturally about when I was a teenager, I did X, Y, and Z, and this is what happened. So I can give you 6 such examples. 4 of them ended up unremarkable. There was no prison time, no jail sentence, no record. For 2 people, it didn't turn out that way. It actually ended up when both are serving lengthy sentences. One of them didn't tell me any detail about her partner's crime. She just conveyed to me that it's hard on the family because the child accompanies mom to the visits, and she said, I don't feel comfortable exposing my child to what I see. We're heavily scrutinized. It's a long drive. It's in a remote area, and we're people of color, and I feel threatened and fearful, and I completely understand. Again, I don't know the nature of the crime, so and also these are people I care about, so I don't want to violate their privacy. The second one is a sibling, and she relates to me things like, he didn't get the newspaper this week. And whenever we talk, I always check in and ask about her sibling. So what I'm trying to convey is someone like myself who lives a very uncomplicated life, is familiar with the justice system and mostly the lack of justice. But that's a different conversation. But I'm trying to show you that because of our justice system and the vast amount of people that we're incarcerating, someone as simple as myself, who again doesn't live a very complicated life, can tell you that on my drive to work, I pass a prison. I see inmates as patients, and I know of friends and colleagues who have either family members or spouses who are in jail and prison. And so what I've learned is when one person's incarcerated, the whole family is incarcerated. And if this statistic is accurate, and I suspect it is, 1 in 3 Black men being incarcerated, that's a lot of Black families that are just devastated by incarceration. And that is how it relates to this book. Can a marriage survive being apart more than you were together? This couple was together for 18 months before he was wrongly accused of a crime. There are a lot of themes I'm going to go through in this book, and I apologize if it's a spoiler, but we're going to do a deep dive, so just watch my video before you go have your book club, or take me with you and just turn this video on. Here are a list of what I want to go through. Is this a story about class? So you learn early on that these are people from the New South, Atlanta. He went to Morehouse, she went to Spelman. They're historically Black colleges. He is very proud of the fact that he is a white-collar businessman. He is running Celestial's business. She's the muse, he's the business side. He's very proud of it. He's very proud of the fact that Celestial does not need to work for a paycheck. And he got to sit his wife down, something Big Roy couldn't do for Olive because he worked at a hardware store, and after hours he was a handyman. Celestial's father discovered a certain substance that you can put in orange juice that keeps the pulp from settling, and he had a patent and became very wealthy. So already you have this tension between Princess and, I don't want to say pauper because he's not. He makes it very clear that I had everything I needed. I had Head Start at the age of 5. I went to Morehouse, but you can definitely see that he's aware of class. And when he's in prison, he said, just so you know, in prison, I'm a white-collar worker because I got a promotion. I used to work picking soybeans because the Louisiana prison system is part of agribusiness. But now I wear a white jumpsuit and push around a trash can. Even in prison where he feels emasculated and his status has dropped because he's no longer the provider, he feels, just so you know, Celestial. And how do you find this out? You find this out through letters. So this is the second time I'm reading a book where you learn about the characters through letters, and it makes it even more intimate because I haven't written a love letter to my husband. Emails? Yes. Love letters? No. In this book, you see the intimate level of their relationship through letters, and I thought that was great. The next thing is, should these two have even gotten married? And this is a tough one to ask because what we're all forgetting, and everyone is a critic on YouTube when they review this book, what we're forgetting is this couple's very young. And one of the things that I found when I read this book and told my husband about it is we immediately did not an autopsy, but a dissection of our own marriage. And I said, if I was imprisoned for 12 years, would you wait? And he said, of course. 12 years isn't a long time. I said, yes, it is. We've been married 12 years. He said, yeah, it's not a long time. It goes by quick when you're old. When you're young, it feels like a long time. And that's something that they convey. It feels like a long time because they were so young when this happened. Next, I found the most appealing about this book is the love story of everyone around the book. So you have a third character named Andre, and his parents' love story never worked out because Evie dies. Oh, never mind. He has a mother named Evie who has lupus, and a father named Carlos who is no longer in the picture, but he still plays a good role. And another thing I loved about this is it shows that these two can have their melodrama and have everything that they had because the parents made so many sacrifices for them. And it really shows love for parents towards their children. And see if you agree with me, because I think that is a love story too. Next, when I said that if you read this book, you end up dissecting your own relationship, my current marriage, this is what's going around. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle give an interview to Oprah. The George Floyd trial just started, and we're about to enter the third wave of a global pandemic. So if I wrote my marriage as a love story or just a novel, it would be set in a certain time. But somehow Tiari Jones has made this book timeless. There are very few instances where you can actually figure out what time this takes place. There's a mention of Spike Lee, Head Start, and like highways in Atlanta that connect to Louisiana. Other than that, this could be set in 1930. It could be set in the future. It doesn't matter. And I think that's why this book is so relevant. She doesn't mark time with respect to what's happening around globally, nationally, or internationally. Now it's time to talk about all the critics. Boy, were there critics. I was watching multiple YouTube videos on people who reviewed this book. Most people really love this book, and I don't put myself in that category. I put myself in the category of the amount of value this book has to give. Like, this should be mandatory reading. I mean, if I had to read Margaret Atwood in high school and Chaucer and Holden Caulfield, Catcher in the Rye, Shakespeare, then this should be there. I think I read Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and that was my exposure to African American authors. I think this book needs to be in high school curriculum and definitely in college curriculum, simply because the amount of discussion that's going to come out of this. You're going to discuss things like the South. You're going to discuss things like geography. Yes, geography matters because we and from the north, think of places like Detroit, Chicago, New York, Buffalo, Oakland, California, where the migration happened out of the South. So in our heads, we think, oh, it must have been really miserable. Well, that's not true. People migrated within the South. And that discussion needs to be had because Atlanta plays a significant role in this book. We also need to talk about mass incarceration. There's no denying it. It needs to be mentioned in this book. They do mention race, but I love how she handles it. She handles race in a way that I mentioned the Meghan Markle interview for a reason. People of color are aware of color. So it's not uncommon for people to speculate the color of the baby's skin when the baby's born. And that blew Meghan Markle's mind. And I was like, really? That was a surprise to you? And I know you're going to come for me in the comments, but I don't think I'm way off base here. Things like that come up in this book. Like, she doesn't talk about race in a very boxy kind of way. It's very natural, the way she talks about race, about how Roy's past girlfriends, he's having a discussion with his dad, and his mom makes a certain comment like, did she look like this kind of girl? Because this kind of girl always makes you sad. And features come up, but she doesn't go too much into things. Like, you learn that Andre's father, Carlos, is Latino, so Andre does look different than Celestial and Roy. But I love how she handles race. I don't know if I'm articulating it properly enough for you, but she does it beautifully. The next criticism I heard was about Celestial. People came after Celestial with pitchforks, and I didn't like her either. But it says something when you don't like somebody and you still commit to the book. And here's what I feel about Celestial. These guys were kids. And if you're going to be judgmental, what were you like when you were a newlywed? Because I can tell you right now, I would not behave the way I behaved when I was a newlywed. If I didn't get my way, there was going to be hell to pay. I'm sure the neighbors heard the fights. It wasn't fun. I don't want to repeat that first year of marriage. And people did not like Celestial. And I didn't like her either, but at least I want to give her a little bit of empathy, because simply for the fact that they were both young. And I don't think Celestial ever grows up. I think she stays in a childlike state, like the dolls that she makes. I don't think this woman is capable of any decisions. That was my impression of Celestial, is that she doesn't really take ownership of what she wants. Do you want to have a baby? If you say no, it's okay. If you say yes, that's okay too. Which man do you want? Do you want to proceed with this marriage? You say you can't. Can't is not the same as want. So that was my impersonation of Celestial, and that made me forgive her shortcomings. But most people wanted to go after Celestial. And I, unlike a lot of people who felt like they had to choose between the two friends, Celestial's old childhood friend, which is Andre, and Roy, I just thought that they were just young. As for Roy, I don't feel like he evolved. And people had trouble with the last 50 pages. One person said in their criticism, did she just write that just so she could get the word count up? The author admitted in an interview, it was so hard to write those last 50 pages. Her heart was racing. It took a year, and I see why, because it almost felt like a stream of consciousness kind of coming into realization of what is your circumstance, and people were very unforgiving of those last 50 pages. They did not like it. You read it and you tell me what you think. I don't think Celestial's fun. I really don't. And I have a feeling that maybe she was written, and I think rather easily, because this book went through several rewrites, I'm sure. If my book went through 8 or 9 rewrites, I am sure this book did more, because my rewrites are to my eyes and maybe 6 beta readers, whereas a author of T.R.A. Jones' caliber, she had professional editors. She went through 2 editors, and the first write was purely from a woman's point of view. No one seemed to mention that this is a book for men. Not one person picked up on that. The voices are male, the histories are male, the circumstances are male. She writes men well. Their humor, their value system, their friendships, their lack of friendships, their relationships with their dads versus their moms, that came across to me rather easily. Like Celestial's relationship with her mom and dad was that of protection. Her father takes her to an emergency room to show her this is how black people are treated in the ER, and the mother's furious and says our child isn't a social experiment. Roy is not protected, he is provided for, because they know Roy can't be soft. He has to grow up into a harsh world. And the father is funny. He says, stay away from that girl. She brandished a pistol at you. What are you gonna do when she gets mad? So I thought that one of the criticisms, and possibly why it was so easy to write Celeste, is the author is a fun lady. I think she's 46, never been married, goes to salsa classes, from the South. I think her family moved from Louisiana to Atlanta, but she lives in Brooklyn. She's a fun lady, and I think it's easy to write Celestial because Celestial is no fun. I don't want to be friends with her. She has a girlfriend / co-worker come over, and she picks up a bottle of wine, but you don't hear fun. Whereas Roy, who's in prison, is describing his cellmate as ghetto Yoda, and it was the funniest thing. Or Roy's father and how he comes through for Roy because he's rooting for the marriage to work. Those are fun. So, good job, T.R.A. Jones. I hope I have the pleasure of meeting you someday. If you happen to be watching this video, good job. I really think this is a great book, and I hope that whoever reads this advocates for this being in our curriculum, because there's so much discussion to be had, and enjoy reading, everybody. I hope this deep dive is helpful, and I hope your book clubs are thriving despite the pandemic. Stay safe, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.